Yeah, we live.
All right, we live, we in this thing, man. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in or that will be tuning in at this particular juncture. Um, we're gonna get it popping, man. As everybody come in, please like the show, share the show. Um, just leaving the other channel this morning, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully you got some useful information up out of there. But today we're gonna deal with a little topic, man. It's useful. We're gonna test the Africanness in a lot of our people today. Um, it's not gonna be what some people expect for it to be, but we will get to the nitty gritty. So if you're just coming into the chat, you know what I'm saying, like the show, share the show, put it on your Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. But we're gonna get it in. So I just want to say first, Lafayette or ETM Hotel to the chat, and Shawn, any Herit, Khalfani, whichever one of them you want to use is okay with me. I appreciate everybody for tuning in right now. I see people are still coming into the show, so that's a good thing. Before I really want to get it in, though, if Brother Kofi got anything he want to say, he can go ahead and get it on now before we get to rocking and rolling.
I just want to say, man, Igum Mujube Iba Igum Kiki Igum Fatmu Alafie Fatmu Iwa Pele. And those come into the chat, please bring forth good character and bring forth peace into the chat. I'm just ready to see what you got cracking, man. And those also in the chat, peace to everybody in the chat, and please take out your pen and paper. I say this a lot because I see a lot of the repetitive questions being asked. We present information, and then people come back and ask questions like we ain't presented the information. So that let me know some people is not paying attention. So please take out your pen and paper.
All right, so yeah, man. Without further ado, Kofi, if you could put it on my screen, that's fine. I know it's only a few people in here right now, but as people come in, man, like you said, we just want to continue to show good character, and we're gonna deal with it, man. You know, that's what we're here for. We're gonna deal with the topic at hand. I see my screen is shared on the other side, so let's get to it, man. And shout out to my brother Richard Raw. Um, he does the intro to this song. So, you know, as people coming in, hopefully we'll get people in the mood for what's going on. But as you can see from my screen, let's rock.
I got the power I share. Hell, all I do is red. No change like a guy. To my fans, hold bread. Traffic in African rituals. I know it's far from typical. I know they calling it mythical. I just be calling it mystical. Black magic with white fabric, they catch your vibe. I see through the ancestors' eyes. You can't see it cause you question eyes. My chain hanging for open. That flame slit, I'm in tone. That high giant is in the air, boy. That smoke fills up that room. I'm consumed. I laugh at ya. Grant my people with good health. Don't talk about it, but I live it, boy. You grant my folks with plenty wealth. I walk the path of that show. Then it reciting no joke. Two mouths up, two mouths down. Got balance made in my view. Oh yeah, bring your wind to change. Power down, I share. Power Miller, getting it purpose. Power down, I share. Throw my oldies through my head. Power down, I share. Read my old duties by daily. Power down, I share. It got me. Ori got me. All I wrong got me. So Oru got me. Igbo got me. Ajuban got me. Baba Wa got me. Yeah, Wa got me. I go Obi, I go Obi, I go Obi you. I go Obi, I go Obi, I go Obi you. I go Obi, I am the sun in the moon. Still, I feel like a Shawn. Only prayer in the morning. Hands up on the phone. 4 pots for a goon. See my grits in the room. Throw the shells to the plate. Menchie and Della's goon. 5 chains on my neck. The inner case they reflect. Y'all speak or you cool. Translation as death. Sprinkle a little I jet. All that room for me eating red. My kingdom I ran. I'm blowing my hand. I'm pitching the sand. Whoa. Keep the always stand with my elite cokies. Warrior type, I'm like a trophy. Django power, come approach me. That's thunder. What a spirit I conjure. Wake them up from their slumber. You just call my number. Oh yeah, bring your winds to change. Power down, I shit. Miller, give me purpose. Power down, I shit. Throw my obies, pull my head. Power down, I shit. Read my old booties by daily. Power down, I shit. It got me. Ori got me. All up wrong got me. So Oru got me. Igbo got me. Ajuban got me. Baba Wa got me. Iyawa got me. I go Obi, I go Obi, I go Obi, yo. I go Obi, I go Obi, I go Obi, yo. I go Obi, I go Obi, I go Obi, yo. Ile Mokio, Aki,
Let's go, man. Let's go. When we are the children of the forest, what need have we to be afraid of? We are only afraid of that which is outside the forest. The first Homo sapiens sapiens, human beings, evolved biologically within a forest habitat. Trees are the center of the lives of primates worldwide. It is a source of shelter, food, and medicine. It's just an image of the forest. Now, the forest is our home. When we leave the forest, or when the forest dies, we shall die. We are the people of the forest. Wood is an extension of the earth and is the symbol of protection, stability, and prosperity. We use wood for our rituals, ceremonies, and music. We set aside a special place in the forest for honoring the gifts it provides us and often encircles it with thorny branches or bushes to demarcate it. To the Yoruba, the bush of the forest is not just the habitat of flora and fauna, but also of spirits, Iwin, Ibora, and Junu, Sirakuinyansen. If I said that correctly, if not, I apologize. Oral, and so on. In other words, the bush or forest is a realm of infinite, where the giant rat may tie up the hunter's dog, the Iroko, a tree that might tell the hunter in which direction to seek game, and the porcupines could perform in a concert. Literally, Critique Cooper describes this reality as an intricate and indivisible mosaic of the universe, which contests the divide between the human and the divine, the animate and inanimate objects of the humans. A family is like a forest. When you are outside, it's dense. When you are inside, you see that each tree has its place. Now, trees, plants, and animals also make up the area of sacred wood, and we remember its blessings and many uses in our lives. The healing medicines, food, shelter, and tools, we reserve this area to the spirits of the forest by leaving intact, without drawing from its resources. Leaving this space off limits keeps us mindful of our reliance upon it. In some villages, we perform annual ceremonies for our sacred wood. What distinguishes man from other species of life on earth is that we are the only living beings that walk upright primarily. It is because man stands tall like a tree, stands and grows vertically, that the tree becomes the metaphor for man itself. Thus, branch, tree, trunk, body, man. In many African traditions, the tree is seen as either one, a human being, two, a home for ancestral spirits, or three, possessing an intelligence equivalent of superior to man. Now, the bush is in the place of the ghosts, demons, monsters, even inverted societies, which only the most powerful hunters and heroes can survive. It is also the habitat of dangerous animals and special plants used by herbalists to make juju medicines. In ritual, the bush shrine is off limits to the uninvited and uninitiated. It is the domain of the powers which dwell in ponds, streams, hills, and trees, but which roam freely and capriciously. Now, the bush is wild, dangerous, uncultivated. It intrudes on farms and has to be cut back. In a deeper sense, it represents the void, the unknown, the other side of the social life, bad, death, estrangement, bond space, and unpredictability. We also honor sacred wood at the base of our trees. The spirits of the trees help to bring rain. They communicate when they are thirsty. We offer milk or sacrifice a chicken or goat and pray. We will not level a tree without first making offerings to the spirits that live in it, so that we'll leave the site. Every tree possesses a different level of Nyame. Whenever one cuts down a tree, one must appease the Nyame through sacrifice. Otherwise, it can greatly harm the carver or the entire community. Our shamans or blacksmiths know which tree require what kind of sacrifice. When we cut trees for our ritual objects, the tree must be cut on certain days and at certain times of the year and fall in a specific direction. The forest, is noted by Aptar, is the realm of infinite possibilities. At once it holds for those who come life, death, trophy, and a trophy. For humans, the forest is immediately perceived as an agnostic half of man's world. To the Dagara, there is an understood hierarchy of consciousness. The elements of nature, especially the trees and plants, are the most intelligent beings because they do not need words to communicate. They live closer to the meaning behind language. The next most intelligent species are the animals, because they use only a minimum of uttered communication, so their language is closer to the source, the world of intrinsic meaning. The last in the hierarchy is the human species, who must rely on words to communicate, and words are but a remote reflection of meaning, like the shadows on the walls of Plato's cave. The forest is very strange and weird indeed. The hunter has to offer a sacrifice before hunting in it, like Ibariba, Emojia, offers the sacrifice before beginning the day's hunting, but fails nevertheless to kill any animals. In every village, we take special care of the construction of our own sacred living spaces. Every land has an owner, a spirit, whom we must befriend if we want to move into its space. We must always make a sacrifice of a goat or a sheep where we wish to build our house. The inyame of the blood of the animal serves as a powerful foundation of which we may construct our dwelling and brings peace between ourselves and the spirits. Some areas of the land require more sacrifice than others, as there may reside a stubborn spirit or spirits who require more appeasing to move from their space. Sometimes a spirit may choose to continue to reside peacefully at the location and provide blessings and protection for the new inhabitants. Some trees possess special meanings in our communities. The Sansan tree is the tree of abundance, and the Sana tree is a symbol of long life. The Balanza tree is a symbol of the male component of creation and connects the heavens and the earth. We do not rest under the shade of this powerful tree without taking precaution. Pregnant women make offerings of shea butter at this tree, which will aid them during their labor. The Kalakari tree, the tree of luck, is known to respond to one's petitions. When a woman is experiencing difficulty finding a suitable mate, she may wash using the powdered bark of the kalakari. One may also chew the bark of the kalakari and then speak his or her wishes, which may be granted. A lesser known Orisha among the Yoruba is the deity Osanyin. The root of the name of Osanyin is the word Oso, which stands for a seer, magician, herbalist. In other words, a priest or healer. Osanyin is the Orisha of plants and an inherent ashe and magic that they contain. Stated plainly, this deity personifies the life power in vegetation and medicine. This Orisha is obligated to the Aja or witches, like with Seer Osiris of the ancient Kemetic traditions. Osanyin is also associated with a tree, the Araba tree. He is the owner of the forest as well, which in Africa is the universal home of the ancestors and God. The Babaluwa staff of Osun, not to be confused with the Orisha of the same name, represents his pact with Osanyin to utilize the properties of herbs for magical purposes. Here are some sacred trees. The Sansan, which I mentioned earlier, the Sana, the Balanza tree, the Kalakara tree, Sakar tree, Mambin tree, the Iroko tree, and the Baobab tree. And then you have the Arabia tree. All of these trees that are mentioned here are all sacred. The Yoruba divinity Osanyin brought all of the plants to earth with their rich and varied shades of green and colorful flowers. In doing so, he also brought to the earth beauty and sacred, which did not exist before. He also brought animals, but is more regarded for plants. One day, Ifa asked him to weed a garden. Osanyin began crying because the weeds he was asked to remove were beneficial as medicine. Since then, Osanyin is known as the doctor in the kingdom of Olodumare. The Dogon say the Sinai seed is the first plant life, and it carries with it elements from the first creation by Amma. Thus, sacrifices made to the Sinai tree bring good to all vegetation. Osanyin, the healer praise, is the Yoruba Orisha of herbalism and medicine. He is the aspect of God which governs the maintenance of health and the prevention of alleviation of physical, spiritual, and mental disease. As worldwide Yoruba religious concept, Osanyin is represented as a staff surmounted by a bird or a group of birds. This religious symbol is in reality the representation of a bird in a tree. The staff, Osun, of Osanyin has a metal base, which is symbolic of a tree's root system, a staff, which is representative of the trunk, a disc, and a cup, which are like the bud scales, excuse me, which cover the leaves inside, and the chains and bells are like fruit or seed sacks on the side of the bud, which, when moved by the wind, warm a danger. The roost on the top of the staff is then the traditional sculpture of the perch bird. Other types of birds can utilize Osan's perch. Those birds represent the Iya Aja, mother conciliator, or mother of existence. Powerful women who are good terms with Osanyin. It takes a bird to counter a bird. It is theorized that the birds signify one's mind and the carrying of prayers in the form of woods to God. Osanyin is said to have monopolized the control of the healing technology, which caused the other Orisha to become jealous and wish for his downfall. Osanyin is not the owner of the forest. He's the lord of plants in the forest. Ogun is the owner of the forest, followed by his friend, sometimes brother, Ososi. He controls all the curative importances, herbs, and plants which grow there. He deals with the non-surgical treatment of disease with herbs and medicinal powers. The leaf is his knife and his wand. Osanyin is the chemist of the pharmacist of the Orisha. He represents two sides of the herbal power. The same thing that can cure you, if used improperly, can kill you. Osanyin is, on the one hand, the force that gives the herbal tonics that can help you, and on the other hand, the poison mushrooms that can kill you. He is the scientist looking for a cure for diseases. He is the pioneer venturing into the unknown fields of the medical science. He symbolizes the unknown, the uncharted, and the hidden power and secrets of the wild. He represents nature's sanctuary from civilization and is the permanent sentinel of sacred groves. He is symbolic of the idea that even in the peacefulness of the forest, there is always lurking danger. This is why he stands even on the alert. Osanyin is the king of trees and is compared to the Araba tree, which is the white silk cotton tree, which is the largest African tree and reaches 120 feet in height with a diameter of 4 to 6 feet. Tiigi, Alagbo Diyaara. With the tree, the owner of the medicine pot makes the body sound.
There's a phenomena that begins with the other world having its way of dialing your number. As if somehow inside of you have a phone system that only the other world can dial. When it is dialed, you feel like shit. And as long as you don't pick up the phone, you're in hell. Then you run around like a crazy person. This society labels you crazy. You wound up being institutionalized, or at least chemicalized, all that in the interest of shutting down the phone that can't stop ringing. And so what happened in the end? What happened in the end is that you become completely lobotomized by a culture that doesn't know what really the hell is going on with you. And since they cannot just sit back and watch you, they try this way, this way, and every way seems to be damaging you more. For some reason, I went to a psychiatric hospital I was accompanying somebody, and as I looked at every room, I realized these people are all healers. In this culture, they imprison healers, keeping them away from the industry. Something is really weird about civilization. But in Dagger land, when somebody goes nuts, goes crazy, people are really happy. They realize we're going to have another healer. We're going to have an additional expert to help us. Meanwhile, the person is going really crazy, is having a lot of trouble, is showing symptom of self-endangerment and endangerment to others. It takes a circle of other people who have been through this process and have wound up each having their healing office complete with successful addressing of various issues brought to them by the village to form a circle around this person. But before that, it takes all kind of consulting to find out what is the specificity of the calling, and what does that specific calling demand from those who know this type of issue to do. Once they find that out, they go through a series of rituals to the mountain, to the water spirit, to the ancestors, to the earth spirit, before they bring the person into the highlights. Where at that time, the whole village is there in celebration. Because in order to prepare for the anointment of such a person, there's a whole choreography that has to be set in place, centered around celebration. That's why to celebrate, you got to take some time to prepare for it. When you're ready, they bring the whole village together to witness the return of the healer, the homecoming of the healer. After a rather long journey of turmoil, pain, and disruption of all that is familiar to the person.
Let's go. That was Maladome and Patrice Sommet in answering the healer's call. We've been leading up to this point during the whole presentation to get to this particular part of the presentation, discussing trees, the importance of the forest, its healing principles and powers for the people in the area. We even mentioned the Yoruba Orisha that deals with the forest, especially the medicinal part and the healing properties and so forth. So now we are really about to deal with something specifically intriguing. I have told earlier in Of Water and the Spirit my own rather dramatic experience as a small child in nature. The vivid memory of a childhood experience that still follows me is connected with an experience in nature with a rabbit. I remember that day when my mother took me along to fetch wood. It is not uncommon to see women with the baby on the back tightly tied going into the bush to gather wood for cooking. My mother tied me that way one of those days when she was going to the bush. And of course, because of my liking for nature, when we got there, she laid me down and I just took off. The immediate habit was to go looking for live things, and I would run after anything that was alive and to try to catch it. It so happened that in running from one bush to another, I came upon a rabbit, and that was a big thing for a child. I could feel my heartbeat increasing and my adrenaline shooting because I knew that it would be a great gift. It would be great if I could catch this little thing. I wanted a really good hunting experience. And when the rabbit disappeared inside a bush, that increased my hunting instincts, for I knew that the rabbit was taking refuge in there. I decided not to run, and I started walking slowly so as not to scare it. The bush was made of lumps of grass, what you may call ferns, and I knew that the rabbit was going to be hiding in one of these. I pulled open one and there was nothing there. I pulled open another and there was nothing there. And then there was only one left. I moved the last clump of grass, and I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Instead of a rabbit, there was something extraordinary like a doll about a foot tall of a human being, except the doll was alive, sitting on something like a tiny chair. But I wasn't interested in the chair. I was interested in the location where it was sitting. It was above something more like a window, as though you were looking through a window, seeing the sky of an immense world, except that sky was below. But the little man wasn't falling through this window. He was just sitting there. I had been making a gesture to leap with all my weight onto the rabbit, knowing that if I fell on it, I would suffocate it. But this gesture stopped halfway down. I was frozen by the sight that appeared in front of me. Worse, the little being began to speak, telling me in a thin voice, I have been watching you for a long time, ever since your mother started bringing you here. Why do you want to hurt the rabbit, your little brother? What did he do to you, little one? Be friendly to him from now on. He too likes the fresh air of this place. He too has a mother who cares for him. What would his mother say if you hurt him? Now go, because your mother is worried. At the time, it made no sense to hear this. What was captivating to me was the fact that I was dealing with a person smaller than me, yet older than me, with a long white beard, sitting in the wrong place at the wrong time, talking to me. Too many pieces of information, each requiring very careful attention, were coming to me, and I couldn't deal with all of them at once. All I could notice was that the rabbit was still there, but it was behind this mysterious halo-like window. To me, the view through the window looked like the sky, like the blue sky, and in it was something that looked like a cloud, but it was not a cloud. Nothing was quite like what we normally see. Everything looked as if it could be this or that, but there was always something missing to make it totally right. The truth of it is that I never made sense of what happened. All I remembered is that after the little man spoke, I heard the sound of my name being called. Melodoma, please answer me. Where are you? It was a familiar voice, the voice of my mother. When I finally reconnected with her, it was late during the day, but we had arrived there in the early part of the day, about mid-morning. I found myself wondering what had happened in that short period of time, which had encompassed an entire day. My mother was breathless, as if she had been looking for me with much trepidation for the whole day. I felt quite fine, and when I told her that I was running after a rabbit and I saw an old man and he told me that I shouldn't hurt rabbits, she became panicked. I couldn't understand why my mother wasn't as calm as I was, for as though I'd only been gone for 5 minutes, and she was acting as though I'd been gone for the whole day. When I said that I've seen the old man, she screamed that I've seen a contumble, which is the Dagara word for being from the other side of reality, the world of spirit. I could not remember having heard about these little beings before. This was good because I knew I would not have reacted the way I did. All I knew was that I had seen a tiny man who was very old, and he had told me not to hurt rabbits. This was indeed my first serious connection with nature and the magic in it. This experience allowed me later on to wonder what other things might be hiding out there in nature that we choose not to notice, or that we are not open enough to allow into the view of our consciousness. Had I not encountered beings like them many more times as an educated adult and conversed with them while taping their voices with their permission for my own record, I think I would have dismissed my original experience as a kind of hallucination. Even now, I still have one reservation about them. It is the fact that they are not willing to show me everything about themselves on the grounds that it will endanger me. They think that certain mental conditions, they wouldn't say which ones, that I have contracted abroad have weakened my psyche's ability to embrace the broader spectrum of reality that their world offers without severely impairing my sense of this world's reality. In Africa in general, and particularly in the region of Africa, No one is surprised when you talk about these beings because everybody knows about the little beings that are very intelligent and very powerful who live in a dimension that is very close to our dimension. I have, however, never again encountered them exactly the way I did when I was so young. My enduring reaction to this experience tells me that a lot more things exist in nature than that which our own sight is able to grasp. And these things can shape very strongly the way we see reality around us. Maybe we would become candidates for some serious magic if we would enter nature with a little more curiosity, a little more openness, and even with the sense of quest. A quest to commune with and to be with a realm that is far more sophisticated than its physical ruggedness reveals. I still ask why the contemple choose to appear to me at the very time, at the very age. I can draw from this that the spirit of the little child radiates something that can easily interact with the energies of nature. It may very well be that my experience with pursuing the rabbit intensified something in me that led to the opening of the very space. The encounter has made me very aware of existence of something beyond the veil of nature that very likely keeps an eye on every human being. It has made me wonder every time I am walking in nature about who is looking at me, who is observing me, and how many eyes are seeing everything that I do without my knowing it. It has made me want to interact with these intelligences, with these beings that are so capable of noticing our human actions. I have always been curious about what would happen if we were to go into nature and find ourselves being welcomed by some contumble elf who shows up to us saying, "Thanks for coming into our world. Let me show you around." What would we do to nature from them on if we knew that in order for these encounters to occur, nature requires that it be kept at the way it is? This is a contumble shrine. Um, they honor and dedicated the shrine to the contumble, and this is what it looks like. When I was 20, I experienced another profound and moving interaction with nature. This time as a part of the rituals of initiation with other villagers. The story of the Green Lady appeared in Of the Water and the Spirit as a part of the larger story of my traditional initiation. But it stands alone well, worth pairing with the rabbit story. When I first returned home to the village after leaving the missionary school, I felt a sense of nostalgia that seemed as though it would never be satisfied. My 15 years in Western institutions had created a huge gap between me and my people. Returning home was not satisfactory because I felt that I didn't belong. I returned to my village not being able to speak in the language of my people and not being able to embrace their manners because I found the customs disgusting. The initiation process were physically excruciating. On this particular afternoon, I had exhausted every resource in trying to outwit the elders who have given me the assignment to sit down and look at the tree until its true nature was revealed. The idea, of course, was completely absurd because my rather westernized mind, I had by the time been educated for 15 years in French mission schools, was totally unable to grasp what it meant just to sit down and look at a tree. The experience was made worse by complete physical discomfort. I remember well that the temperature of 110 degrees, my nakedness, sweat, and hunger, the hot gravel and crawling ants. In the middle of all this, I was being asked to ignore this discomfort and focus my attention on a tree. A stupid exercise, I thought. After about 30 hours of this excruciating discomfort, including the same of being caught trying to lie about what I was experiencing in order to fool the elders into thinking I had gotten it, I realized that the one thing I had to do was to find some way to end the ordeal. I had moved to a critical juncture. I could give up and terminate the exercise right there, which would mean terminating my initiation, or I could find some way through. I felt shame and failure, and I was crying. What was wrong with me that I could not do what I was asked to do? I was failing at an initiation task, and my sense of ostracism from my peers, they hadn't been taken away from home and asked to endure 15 years in a foreign culture, became even more painful and intolerable. Through my tears, however, I continued to keep an eye out on the tree. As I looked at it, I suddenly began speaking to it, as if I had finally discovered that it had a life of its own. I told it all about my discontent and my sadness and how I felt that it had abandoned me to the shame of lying and of being laughed at. I then spoke to the tree again, not angrily but respectfully. I told her that after all, it was not her fault that I could not see, but mine. I simply lacked the ability. What I really needed to do was to come to terms with my own emptiness and lack of sight, because I knew she would always be there when I needed to use her to take a good look at my own shortcomings and inadequacies. What happened next is the kind of experience that, like the encounter with the rabbit, molded my perception forever. The tree that I had been watching for so long was no longer there, and in its place was a beautiful green lady. I do not know if the tree became her or if she stepped out of the tree, but this really doesn't matter. Where the tree had been, there was now a figure that looked like a human being in the shape of a woman, very tall, probably 7.5 feet tall. Her tunic was silky and black, and she wore a veil over her face. And when I looked again, she had lifted the veil, revealing an unearthly face. I call her the Green Lady because she was green. Her skin was green, but the greenness in her had nothing to do with the color of her skin. She was green from the inside out, as if her body were filled with green fluid. I do not know how I knew this, but this green was the expression of immeasurable love. I had no idea how long I was in her arms, but it felt like a long time. I had no intention of ending this embrace. Having finally gotten this feeling, this support, this love, I had the feeling that all we needed to do was just go home and live happily ever after. But then I realized that she was telling me that she needed to go, and I needed to go too. Of course, that was not part of my plan, and as a result, I found myself clinging to her. How could she go without me? I was with her, holding her totally in my hands. So I held her more strongly. It was then that a strange thing happened, which I have never been able to figure out, changing the softness of her feminine body into some kind of ruggedness that became more and more uncomfortable. With a pleading gesture, I lifted my head to beg her to stay, and my eyes told me that I was hugging the tree. The feeling was very humbling. I felt at first that I have been deceived, yet my body and spirit felt very subdued with an almost religious posture. I didn't dwell in the feeling of being tricked because the strong feeling of reality, what I had experienced, was still present. I was bitterly disappointed at not being able to go with her, and disappointed that such a powerful and loving being had been turned back into a tree. As I sobbed holding the tree, I became aware of the comments that the elders who had been watching me were making. I heard one of them say, "They're always like this. First they resist and play dumb when there are a lot of things waiting to be done, and then when it happens, they won't let it go either. Children are so full of contradictions. The very experience you rejected before the lies you are now accepting with apology." This last sentence seemed to have been directed at me. I looked up at the elder who spoke. He met my eyes, and I felt no further need to be holding on to the tree. Hours had passed, and the sun had already set. "Go find something to eat and make your bed for the night," he said gently. "What can one make of my experience? It could easily be dismissed on the grounds of some well-known theories. After all, wasn't it very hot that day? What kinds of hallucinations might arise in a person who is dehydrated, hungry, and hot?" I followed that line of reasoning myself many times, only to turn back from it ultimately. Two things have brought me back from doubt. The first is my continued interaction and as a Western educated adult with the other world, particularly the Cantumble. The other thing is that the elders who were there with me that day were obviously sharing my experience. These witnesses had seen what I have seen, and they were not dehydrated or thirsty. This tells me that more things exist than what my powerful Western education can explain. And for some reason, the things I cannot explain using my Western education seem much more interesting to me than the mundane facts of everyday experience. Hence, my deliberate attempt to share these experiences. My experience with the Green Lady raises an important issue, namely, the true identity of the elements of nature. What if they are not inanimate objects as people in the West have been taught to believe, but rather living presences? How would we need to change if we granted to a tree the kind of life that we usually reserve for so-called intelligent beings? If you peek long enough into the natural world, the trees, the hills, the rivers, and all natural things, you start to realize that their spirit is much bigger than what can be seen. That the visible part of nature is only a small portion of what nature is. The elders say that there is much more to seeing than simple sight. To me, at least, the Green Lady is being who took that form to convince me of the vitality inside that tree. Nature shows itself in some unique way to every individual during his or her initiation. And I know of these stories of many other people who have been touched in this way by nature. The deepest dimension of my own transformation came about through being touched in this way. My jumping, downing mind began to find some rest. The fires in me of alienation, pride, and danger began to be quenched by the waters of accepting love. I no longer felt like a proud, wounded outsider. The experience that the Green Lady resolved it. For all of a sudden, I belonged. I could feel it. I could sense it. I was in it. The isolation brought about by becoming alienated from my own native language and able to speak only in the language of the colonizer was wiped out in one shot with the experience with the Green Lady. She changed me from deep inside. She allowed me to break through the wall of perception that my Western education had erected in me, and she connected me intimately with nature, the way my fellow villagers experienced it. She had brought me back home. Here are my sources. You can pause the video, you can screenshot this, whichever you want to do. Here are my picture references. Every last one of these sites here are just images that I used and from. My bad. And before we actually conclude, what I gathered from Malidoma Some's initiation with the tree is that it helped him restore himself back to who he was before he left to be educated in the West. The West meaning here, or in other places, Europe, or, you know, if he's been in the United States is really where he got his education from. You can actually study him a little bit and get to know him and all of that things. But what that one initiation done for him, I'm not going to say the tree talked. I'm not going to say the tree turned into a lady. I'm not going to say the tree did anything but be a tree. In his initiation, a lot of things transpired. He told you at the beginning, the heat. He remembered the heat being like 110 degrees. He remembered the conditions, the ants, how congested it was, how uncomfortable it was. But he had tolerated all of those things for 30 hours to the mere fact that he started crying, and it was in him crying at basically dang near breaking that he began to have this experience with nature. And a lot of people say that when you have a plant that's in your home and you water that plant, and if you talk to that plant will grow upright, and that plant will begin to be fruitful, and that plant will begin to expand, and that plant will begin to give out a healing principle in it. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that part. But from that experience that he had in his initiation, what I took from it is that to let go of the foolishness and to focus on the things that you need to focus on and allow love to overwhelm and help you resolve that issue, whatever it is, for you to overcome it. Most people will reject this. Most people will not accept this. A lot of us, because we've been westernized in our education. But hopefully, through this presentation, we can learn a little bit about African spirituality from its own concept through someone else's initiation until we can have our own experience if we're brave enough, if we're not scared to go back and to practice our traditional ways. Now, yes, there has been a much aligned conversation that has been needed and required in dealing with spirituality and science. However, African spirituality can stand on its own. It doesn't need science to solidify its standing. It can do what it needs to do for oneself. In this presentation, I tried to bring out the in-depth attitude of nature and its essence in dealing with African people from that perspective, to show you that we can get back to our sane selves and still be scientific and technologically sound to move our people forward. This is not a bump in the road. This conversation was to be had. This conversation is not in vain. This conversation was not disrespectful. This conversation was more intriguing than not intriguing. And we shouldn't look or frown upon this particular conversation, no matter which side of the argument that you are on. In my research, I was already working on this. I was already doing science. I was already critiquing my methodology. I was already looking at nature. I have already been studying different aspects of spirituality. I have not committed to a certain spiritual group, but I knew that I needed science. And I know, in order to ground myself, that I would need to go back beyond what my colonizer had given me. So therefore, in this presentation and in my closing words before I let Kofi go in, I hope I did a job and a service to not only the ancestors, but to everybody in the chat. However many people actually stayed to pay attention through the presentation the whole way through. So Kofi, if you got something to say, brother, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I want to say, man, Ecker, man, that was a great presentation, man. Right there. I just want to say, with the sources that we get, this is what I just asked the family to do. I understand that we gravitate toward people, you know what I'm saying, and we may sound intellectual, we may sound smart, we may be able to captivate the audience and so forth. When we do these presentations, or anybody else that does these presentations, we put these sources up here for a reason. And I just ask that y'all go through these sources. Like, it's been an ongoing discussion about African spirituality and science. One people been arguing on certain hands and presenting information. Some ain't been presenting information. Some been arguing on this side. I just ask that we pick up some of these books, like one side of the token dealing with the science. Every book that Asar talked about, in his presentation, he gave you his sources. And we always talk about critique our sources, vent our sources, don't take our word for it. I ordered every book that he had on there. We need to start, after we do these presentations, or individuals do these presentations, we got to stop being indoctrinated like we still in the church. We got to start picking up these informations and not taking what we say. Do your own due diligence of research. Start picking these books up. Stop being like these people in the churches just following what somebody is saying. Order these books. Pick these books up. Get at us if y'all need to get at some books. These sources are very important. Also, we're going to continue to push our ancestors' traditions. Again, that was a great presentation by my brother Herit, Shawn, Khalfani. I hope you got something out of it. That was a great breakdown as the way, also, brother Shawn, at the end of it, of what you thought he got out of his initiation. And that book also, I have that book, just got the book. To be
Yeah, it's one of Asar's. I actually have, I think, 3 of Asar's sources in this presentation, as a matter of fact.
Right. So, you know, that's why we said we have to grab this information, and we have to go through and comb through this information ourselves. So we're gonna continue to build on our ancestor traditions. Um, and I'll be trying to connect the dots some more too, just on the side of what we call African spirituality, which I may do something in what is called African spirituality. You know, our ancestors on the continent called it African spirituality, or did we coin African spirituality uh, in North America? Also, I'll be connecting the dots on the concepts for those that want to understand how and why our ancestors created what we call African religion, what some call African religion, what some call African spirituality. So I'll be combing through a lot of information and a lot of different ethnic groups on how and why they came up with these particular systems that we call now African religion or African spirituality. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in. We really, really appreciate y'all for taking out y'all time, because y'all could have been doing anything else. Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. We're going to continue to keep coming at y'all with this information. Again, go through these sources. Don't be a parakeet. Please do not be a parakeet. A parakeet is someone who listens to someone else's and then repeat someone else's information without going or combing through their individual information. So please don't be a parakeet.
In short, basically what he's saying is don't appeal to authority. Don't, don't just follow the script. Just don't appeal. We don't appeal to authority around here, because one of our teachers decides to scrutinize certain aspects of whatever, and say the things that they have say, and then back it with the evidence on their side of the argument. At least if you're going to do anything, if you're going to appeal to authority when they tell you to scrutinize everything, question everything, use correct methodology. That means vet the sources on both sides of the argument and then draw an honest conclusion down the road. This is 2 lanes here. You have to understand the arguments in 2 lanes. So what I have done and what I've consistently continued to do is be the person to travel down the middle. I haven't taken to either side. As a matter of fact, I have argued for both sides, against people on both sides of the argument. And then when they like, well, you arguing for this, and then they see me arguing against this on a whole nother thing, I have been steadfast. So it is our duty to continue to use the correct method, tep hesed, okay, in order to present information to you guys. Not this side of the coin, not that side of the coin. It is to keep it straight and narrow so that we can get to the truth, or we can reveal truth within its true context from both sides. So again, man, Kofi Pie Side TV tonight, 6 p.m. Kofi.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good character.
3 hours from now. 3 hours from now.
Yeah, 3 hours from now. So please tune in. It's going to be a series of this discussion. We had a great discussion maybe 2 weeks ago. Good character, more ethics, and more value. This is part 2 of good character, more ethics, and more values. If you missed the first this presentation / discussion, please go back and look at it. It was a powerful presentation / discussion. Today we'll be doing the same thing. Myself, I'll be presenting information, visual information with the discussion. Shawn, Shawn Khalfani will be presenting information, and we'll be discussing it. Asari Makar will be presenting information. We'll discuss it. Vasa Nicolo Gullah will be presenting information. We'll be discussing that. Satep and Rob Mariaman will be presenting a little information. We'll be discussing that. And T'Challa Bangara will be presenting some information, and we'll be discussing. So it'll be a presentation discussion today on good character, moral ethics, and moral value. This is a discussion that is really needed in what we call the so-called conscious community, the social community. We need to continue to discuss this topic, good character, moral ethics, and moral values, because it's a lot. If we don't, I see it's not going on in the conscious community, especially for those who say they are African. But see y'all at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on Kofi Paisai TV.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna end the show right there, man. And you know how we always end it. We're gonna rock it all the way out. Try to keep this show within the context. The next 3 shows are going from me, or presentations will be less lengthy and will be probably in the context of 25 to 30 minutes. And the job of that is to help you be able to digest the things that we're going to be bringing you the next few weeks from a cultural aspect. So I want the next few presentations to be shown to y'all kids, and for your kids to have the ability to be able to sit through one of these in 20 or 30 minutes or something like that. I know that they actually can do. So man, I'm coming. I got some jewels for y'all the next few weeks. I really could get into the other ones right now. I got the time. However, but I'm just trying to keep them digestible. And I promise you, when I get into the next few presentations, that your kids will love them. It's not going to be heavy. It is going to be some good information, some real good information, and it's going to be digestible. I think 1 out of the next 3 will be a little historical. So that one might test the waters a little bit for your children, but more so when I get into the later aspects of the presentation, there'll be some cultural links and context that they'll appreciate and that they can learn from about their ancestors in West Africa that they can build on. So without further ado, man, we're going to rock it out, and we'll see y'all tonight on Kofi Paisai TV at 6 p.m. And I have my little few slides ready to talk to y'all about. On that note, we out.
For the unity and the redemption of the African world. Salute them honorable Marcus. We were not ready to listen then. They might not have been ready then. And wonder whether we are ready. Ain't no doubt about it. To listen. We ready, baby. Now. Let's go. Yeah. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. Black fists in the sky, waving side to side. If the flag fly high. Come on. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. All these G's on the rise, all eyes to recognize. Flag fly high. Hold it high. Let it fly. Rep those colors forever. Garvey would never die. On the night in the throne ready. Let's take a ride. Cats won't fix me and don't choose a side. This is the path for the warriors. Seldom travel yet still vainglorious. Black power represents us. You either voting with Africa or against us. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. Black fists in the sky, waving side to side. If the flag fly high. Come on. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. Flag fly high. RPGs on the rise, all eyes to recognize. Flag fly high. The red is for the blood. I got the best stock. The rest got stood. The black is for the gods, melanated and elevated, holding the main charge. The green is for the cradle. Africa, everything first, the earth's navel. His Excellency put it together as a symbol of liberation. That's how we get the letters RBG. Flag fly high, flag fly high, flag fly high. Black fists in the sky, waving side to side. If the flag fly high, come on. Flag fly time. Out the drab on my design, we won't ready. Hard line, ain't no games with that red flame. Took the stage of that black bang. Revolution in my veins, till we free, I won't change. And you can count on that like an abacus. Celebrate the victories and the challenges. It's deeper than social media statuses. This lifestyle full of nation building practices. Yeah, fuck a flag fly high, a flag fly high, a flag fly high. Black this in the sky, baby, side to side. If the flag fly high, come on. Flag fly high, flag fly high, a flag fly high. RPGs on your flag, all eyes reflect the sky. The flag fly high.
Red, red, red.
Black, 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 green, green, green. RPG, I'm about that red, red, red. Black, 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 green, green, green. That RPG, I'm about that red, red, red. That black, black, black. That green, green, green. RPG, I'm about that red, red, red. Black, 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 green, green, green. That RPG, baby. RPG, baby. Come on. Fly high, a flag, fly high, a flag, fly high. Shout out to all my RPGs worldwide. Doing this thing garbage style. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Flag, fly high, my flag, fly high. Come on. Flag, fly high, my flag, fly high, my flag, fly high. RPGs on the rise.
All eyes.